let's talk parody. I think parody has a bit of a problem, or maybe it's not a problem. Let's talk about it. I love the Colbert Report. I love the Colbert Report. This is a show where Stephen Colbert has a character named Stephen Colbert who is basically a super dialed up version of Bill O'Reilly or that kind of Fox News style aggressive host. And he has mostly liberal guests and he basically attacks them. So the way this is intended to be watched, I believe, is that this is such an overblown caricature of the Bill O'Reilly character. You're supposed to be like, ha ha, this is exactly what the Fox News the Fox News pundits are doing. Isn't it ridiculous? Can you see how out of control this is getting? I can feel like this is shining a light on a problem with conservative media. But they've done studies, and what they find is actually a problem. Because if you are left-leaning, if you are a liberal, then you do see that. You see, yes, Stephen Colbert is shining a light upon a problem of conservative media where it's very attack-based and very little of it is based upon facts. But if you're a conservative, you see something different. You still recognize it as being parody, but what you feel like is being parodied is actually the liberal guests. Stephen Colbert says this person is a soul-sucking person who is destroying America. And the conservative is hearing, yeah, I wish we could say that to that liberal guest because they are a soul-sucking person who's destroying America. So what do you have? If your goal with the parody was to change people's minds, that's not what's happening at all. Liberals are hearing that people being made fun of are the conservative pundits. Conservatives are hearing the people being made fun of are the liberal guests. There's no middle ground. There's no movement of the discourse. But, and this is where the is it really a problem comes in, if the goal was to make a very popular show, the Colbert Report was a very popular show. It was on Comedy Central, and yet it was part of the discourse. What's your goal with your parody? Is your goal to shine a light on a topic, to raise it to ridicule, and to maybe change a few minds? I would argue that parody is probably not the way to go about that. Because what will happen, or at least what the studies show will probably happen, is that some of your audience will hear what you are trying to say, and some of your audience will actually hear the opposite, that they will see this as a piece of comedy, but the joke that they hear is the opposite joke from the one you were telling. And so rather than moving the conversation forward, rather than changing any minds, you may just be serving to reinforce existing beliefs. Now, that's not to say you can't do parody. I think that there are lots of interesting shows that are parodies. I love The Orville. The Orville is Seth MacFarlane's parody of Star Trek The Next Generation. But I think in a lot of ways, The Orville maybe shows how to do parody correctly. So The Orville is a show that obviously loves Star Trek The Next Generation. It's incredibly true to the feel of that show, and the parody lives in knowingly approaching the situations that a Star Trek crew would find themselves in and reacting in sort of more modern ways. But it's still being respectful to the underlying source material. I think The Orville does do social commentary, but it's not doing social commentary through the parody of Star Trek The Next Generation. It's actually using the structure of that TV show to do its social commentary. The social commentary is coming through the situations that the crew finds itself in. Situations that are the same as a Star Trek The Next Generation crew might find themselves in, or at least very reminiscent of those. So in that case, the parody is serving as a framing device or serving to potentially broaden the potential appeal of the show. It's not serving as the vector of social commentary. And I think maybe that's the lesson of parody. Like the Colbert Report, parody can actually broaden your potential audience because you potentially are actually appealing to two very divergent groups who are interpreting your media in different ways. But if you are respectful of the underlying media, then you have the potential to use that larger audience, onboard that audience, and then tell your story through the media of parody, but use the storytelling to get your message across, as opposed to the actual structure of the parody itself. To compare to the Orville, Last Action Hero is a movie I like, but actually didn't get the audience that maybe they were hoping for. Is like the Orville, it's a parody of action movies of that time period. But I think that unlike the Orville, which is incredibly serious in its implementation of the genre, or in the Orville's case, the show that it's parodying, The Last Action Hero isn't a great action movie, even though it's parodying action movies. Going back to the dual audience, Last Action Hero potentially could bring in people who are sick of action movies and people who love action movies. What happens with The Last Action Hero, people who are kind of sick of action movies find the movie really good and say, yeah, it's kind of making fun of all these tropey things in action movies from the late 90s. Isn't that funny? People who love action movies come in expecting to get a true to form action movie, maybe with some extra jokes, and then they're disappointed because what they get is something that isn't a great action movie. It's a parody of an action movie, and they may feel either spoken down to, or they might just feel like this isn't a very good action movie. Spec Ops The Line going into games is a good example of that. I think it's an excellent deconstruction of the shooter genre, but if you approach Spec Ops The Lines as a super fan of shooters, it's not a great shooter. It's a deconstruction of shooters. My final statement on parody is, don't use parody to try to change minds, because people are going to come to parody with their existing stance, and chances are your parody is only going to reinforce that stance. But parody is an opportunity to reach a broader audience, potentially. But to do that, it needs to be both good parody and a good implementation of the thing that's being parodied. And in that way, you actually can serve two audiences and potentially do better, potentially subversively get your message in there some other way. Special thanks to my members. They provide the resources that this channel needs to keep running. If you're interested in becoming a member, there'll be a link down in the description. We've also turned super thanks on for this channel, so if you want to just throw a couple bucks this way, there's a heart-shaped thing somewhere below the video. It would help the channel out. What do you think? Do you think that parody can work as a way to change people's minds? If you do, let me know down in the comments. We can talk about it. Maybe I'm missing something. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and leave a comment, because that will help YouTube know that it's getting some attention and help it share the video more broadly. I will see you again soon. Thank you.